following Power Chats is about inclusion, education, and accessibility, with our special guest, Maria Olson, Deputy Chief of Mission at the United States Embassy here in Athens, Greece, in conversation with Dr. Peggy Pelonis of the American Community Schools of Athens.
Maria Olson, it's such a pleasure to have you here today. You are the Deputy Chief of Mission at the United States Embassy here in Athens, Greece. I know that you have had extensive experience internationally. You have worked in places like Russia and Jordan and Burundi and Syria, and of course, lots of work in Washington, D.C. with a lot of different countries around the world. It's really a pleasure to have you here. I also know that you are a career diplomat, as I said earlier. You're a parent of 4 children, one of whom we're lucky to have here in the school. And you are very passionate about education, inclusivity, and accessibility. And I know, I think that's the place I want to start, because recently I was at the U.S. Embassy event, the celebration of the 4th of July event, and the theme was inclusivity. Can you tell us a little bit what that means to you?
Thanks, Peggy. And I want to say thank you for hosting me here today, and also for being part of my child's education, and also ACS, where we're sitting here today, was the school where my husband went to school for 3 years back in the 1960s. So ACS has a special place in my heart. Look, our theme, education, inclusivity, and accessibility, is a theme that's really near and dear to my heart. It's one that makes sense for our diplomatic relationship with the government of Greece. Inclusive education means essentially child-centered education. It means bringing the tools that a child needs to learn to that child so that they can engage. And that, frankly, includes kids with special needs. And you asked how we came to that theme. So, kind of pulling aside the curtain on diplomacy, every time you go to a country and you're engaging with that country, you take a look around and you try to understand what is important to the people of that country and to the government of that country. And of course, Greece is the birthplace of the modern Western education system, and so education has a very near and dear spot in people's heart here, also in the United States. And as part of our agenda on prosperity, but also on human rights, education is a really important place to start when we're thinking about engaging with the government of Greece. I mentioned the prosperity agenda. Education, inclusive and accessible education, also makes sense when we're working with the government of Greece on creating a prosperous society, both for the United States, but also for Greece, which, if you look at the statistics, we know the economy here is booming, but we also know that the population is declining. If you look at the statistics, in 2050, Greece may have lost 2 million people. So we want to create a system where you get all of the kids into the workforce and you give everybody the tools that they need to succeed, including the 20% of the population which may have some kind of disability. And at the end of the day, if we are lucky to live long enough, all of us will face some kind of disability. So inclusive and accessible education makes sense on so many levels. And then it's also, disability rights are human rights, and July is Disability Pride Month. So there were a number of reasons.
And it sounds like you're saying, you know, we need to level that platform of education so that every child can learn. We have firsthand experience that children with learning disabilities can thrive. They're very successful out in the world if you give them the tools to navigate the environment, you know, around that learning difference and disability. So, and along those lines, I just want to mention that many people were very surprised to see that the July 4th celebration, which usually takes place traditionally in the ambassador's home, was at the music hall. And why was that? Why did you choose that?
So I want to take us back a year or so ago. I was hosting an event at my home, and I had invited a number of guests, and I realized right before the event with some horror that one of my guests was going to have some difficulty just stepping over the threshold. And I thought, I want to be a respectful hostess and make sure that everybody is able to celebrate and get together in my home. We were having this conversation about our embassy, which is in the middle of downtown Athens, and about our ambassador's residence. And so we got together with some local groups to do an assessment of our properties. And we realized that the ambassador's residence wasn't going to convey the message of inclusivity and accessibility that we so wanted to convey, particularly with this year's theme. And so we took a look around to see what venue could actually send the message to all of our guests that you are welcome, you are able to come in and enjoy this celebration with us. And so we really benefited from the expertise of a lot of groups.
A very strong message it was, and you had 2 keynote speakers that were on wheelchairs that made a lasting impression. One was a stand-up comedian, so to speak, and she was very funny. So definitely the message came across to a lot of people, and it was really wonderful to see that was made available to everyone, because we would be losing out if we didn't have access to the wisdom of the people that were there. And you mentioned a minute ago that July 4th or July 26th is Disability Month. It's going to be actually the 34th anniversary of the signing of that groundbreaking agreement, the Americans Disability Act, the ADA. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and that movement and how it's advancing human rights in the United States?
So the ADA is a very important piece of legislation that allows people with disabilities access to public places and public services. It came about by the efforts of a very pioneering woman named Judy Heumann. She was the United States Foreign Ministry, or State Department as we call it, our first special envoy for disability rights. And Judy's story is really important in understanding kind of the rise of the disability rights movement and why this piece of legislation is so important. So she was born in post-World War II New York City. She developed polio when she was 18 months old, and she became a wheelchair user. And at the age of 5, when she wanted to go to school, like every other 5-year-old in the United States, she was told she couldn't because she was a fire hazard for the school. So, as in so many cases in a home where there are children with disabilities, Judy's mom became her fiercest advocate. And she homeschooled her for a while and then got her access to the school system. And Judy decided that she wanted to become a teacher when she grew up. But although she passed the university exams, she was denied the right because she couldn't pass the medical exam. So she sued the New York State Education Board and became the first teacher in the state of New York in a wheelchair. And I have to remind you, all of this was transpiring in the United States after World War II, when our first president, who was a wheelchair user, was in office, had served in office. So she became this fierce advocate, and she was a pioneer for the ADA and also the UN Convention on Disability Rights, and then she became our special envoy in the State Department. And I have to say, last year we hosted the current envoy on disability rights, Sarah Mankara, who came to Greece, and she came 2 times actually, and she used to talk about education and disability rights, and she said, you know, when she was in university, she had a classmate come up to her and say, "Sarah, what classes are you taking this semester?" And she said, "I'm taking this class, this class, this class. Why?" And her classmate said, Sarah's blind, visually impaired. Right. And she said, "Why?" And her classmate said, "Because when you're in the classroom, the teacher teaches the content better. I want to be in the classroom with you.
And I had the pleasure of meeting her. She visited ACS with you, and that's so true. In fact, the way, teaching the way children learn is so important. And it's a methodology that all teachers should be privy to, because we expect kids to come on board with our own ways of teaching. But there are so many other ways, there are so many tools to provide. And that is true that a teacher with a background in learning disability training they're some of the best teachers in the school. That's certainly true in our school. So everybody benefits from this kind of teaching. Shall we come back here to Greece again and specifically I want to ask you, what is the U.S. Embassy doing to advance disability rights and inclusion here? Can you tell us about some of the programs that are taking place here in our homeland?
And thank you for saying that teachers with special ed training are some of the best teachers. My dad was a special ed teacher in a middle school and taught a lot of refugee kids and kids with different disabilities, and just was a wonderful human being, is a wonderful human being. Look, I want to give a shout out really to ACS for pioneering really the first special needs education program that exists, at least in private schools in Greece. I've been in Greece for 2 years, and I've met a lot of people, and it is not uncommon for me to meet someone when I ask them about their children and where they went to school. They'll say, oh, I have one who went here, and then I have one who went to ACS. And I look at them and I say, were they part of the Optimal Learning Program, which is your program for helping bring the tools to kids who have different needs, right? And they say yes, and they are very proud and have benefited greatly from your pioneering work here at ACS. We do a lot of work, including with you. We've partnered with you and U.S. University and the American College of Greece on a year-long program to enrich the curriculum that exists here, and to include teaching to kids who have special needs, and to bring that curriculum across Greece, and also to train teachers. So that's one project we're working on. We also work with a couple of other institutions, including the University of Thessaly, which is doing pioneering work, bringing traditional students and kids with special needs together in the classroom. And their work shows that in this environment, actually all kids learn better, which is so important. And then finally, we work with a local organization called Metaroa, which has partnered with groups that work with people with special needs. And basically, using 3D printing, they create small things that improve the lives of people living in their homes and making their homes and workplaces more accessible. So those are some of the efforts that I'm really proud of.
And I just want to bring to people's attention, because I think it's still a common misperception that kids with learning needs, there's something not right, and I believe we need to change that narrative. And when we talk about optimal learning program, our optimal learning program, it really goes across the gamut. So it also includes kids that are advanced in learning, that are very advanced in certain subjects or ways of thinking, or So it's across the spectrum. But in addition to that, you mentioned some of the partnerships, and I also want to bring light to a recent partnership, which involves also, of course, the U.S. Embassy, but the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, who is very keen to help spread the word with us and to provide the tools to teachers in the community of public schools to be able to work with kids in differentiated ways and give them and level that platform and give them that opportunity. So it sounds like there's a lot going on, and it sounds like that theme is going to be around for a while.
I hope so.
Yeah. Do you have any parting thoughts for us based on your recent experiences here in Greece?
I just really want to say thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you to the work that other organizations across Greece are doing. I want to underscore that this is really about prosperity. It's about allowing more people to enter the workforce who have a really great educational background and are able to contribute to their country and bring their creative ideas and contribute to the economy. But it's also about human rights. Yeah. So it's the right thing to do both for our hearts, but also for our countries. So thank you.
And we heard a lot about human rights in the previous Power Chat with the World Human Forum. And it really is about relationships, because you can have all the systems in the world in place, all the processes, all the laws, but it's really about people coming together to make things happen. And, you know, given our theme this afternoon, the global goals and the summit around that theme, is there a call to action for our audience?
Look, I liked what the previous speaker talked about, doing what we can do. Yeah. And I firmly believe as a diplomat that respect for others is very important. As a U.S. diplomat and my boss, Ambassador Tunis, you know, we often say that, you know, we have diplomatic priorities as part of the U.S. government. The U.S. government is not a perfect, the United States is not a perfect society. And so as diplomats, we go out and we partner with people on things that we can do at the government level, but also at the individual level to make things better for people. And so our Independence Day celebration was one small thing that we could do to bring more people in, and our partnership with you is another example of that. So I think my call to action to people is really look around at the people who are on the margins, who are not included, and think about what they have to bring to the table, what they can contribute, and the way that what you can do to bring them in.
Find a way to include them in the conversation.
Yes.
Because I think there's a lot of wisdom there and things that we would probably don't think about unless we have that voice.
That's right.
So
and also, I think you don't always have to feel comfortable. Yeah. I mean, that is a lesson that we took away in working on this Independence Day event. We did not know how to even greet people necessarily at the door, or how to think about setting up a space for people who might have visual impairments. So you have to ask, and it's okay to ask. It's okay not to know exactly how to do it, and to recognize that that might make you uncomfortable because you don't know something, but others are happy to tell you if you ask.
Yeah, rather than tiptoe around them.
Right.
Well, Maria Olson, thank you so much for joining us here today with a very, very important message that I think will have great impact on the work that you're doing. You really are an inspiration. Thank you for
so
joining
much.
us today.
Thank you.